I've seen my share of struggle when I thought that I knew best, when I've sailed through a storm instead of stopping to rest. But it always seems the hardest when I've made up my stubborn mind. Well, I'm changing my ways this time. Wanna be like water coming down a mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. Have you ever seen an eagle head straight into the wind? He doesn't pick a fight, spreads his wings and just gives in. And in the end he always makes it home just fine. Guess he knows that every storm subsides. Wanna be like water coming down a mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. I'll let nature take its course. No more thinking that I know where this river's meant to go. I have railed against the stars for the cards that I've been dealt, for the lottery I've never won, for the heartache that I've felt. But it always seems when I let go of expectation and regret, life has plenty of surprises for me yet. I wanna be like water coming down a mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. Wanna be like water coming down a mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. Now, I am a recovering child of two lawyers. Grew up in Chicago. Both my parents went to the University of Chicago, and I was raised to be a good boy who stopped completely at stop signs and paid my taxes on time, and got a college degree and wore a suit to synagogue every Saturday morning, and was nice to my elders and followed the letter of the law, and got a good job, married a cute, nice Jewish girl, and I had some nice Jewish kids, and lived out my days as a lawyer with a nice Jewish wife and nice Jewish kids. And strike one, strike two, yep, failed on all fronts. I do pay my taxes, so that's good. And in the words of Alicia Silverstone in Clueless, at a stop sign, I totally pause. Anybody? Okay, anyway. I love that line. I do stop, but anyway, don't worry about me. You can worry about me. Although my bubby, I used to visit my bubby in a nursing home. My dad's mom lived to 98, and every time I would visit her, when I was leaving, she would say, "Danny, be crazy driving home. There's a lot of crazies out there. Be careful driving home. There's a lot of crazies out there." And I say, "Bubby, I'm one of the crazies." Yeah. Anyway. So I was most definitely not raised to be like water. And if you were listening to that song and you thought it was relaxing, good. But if you're listening to the words and you had any sort of cynical or skeptical thought about it, so did I. I sing songs about trust and surrender, and half of me thinks the other half is completely full of it. The half of me the half of me that was raised by lawyers to pay my taxes and get a college. I mean, you're looking at somebody who was a computer programmer for fun as a little boy, Commodore 64s, and if you remember, TI 99s, and then I became a computer programmer after college because any minute now I was going to be famous and rich from my music. But until then, I needed a job. By the way, that was not doing any music whatsoever. I just figured somebody would just see it in me, and which turns out to not work. But anyway, so I was a computer programmer after college. Majored in, what would you guess I majored in college? Not computer science, but you're close. Economics. Because, again, I was not raised to be a musician. And my parents are wonderful parents in a lot of ways. But one of their specialties was not guiding Danny towards what he was most passionate about as a profession. It just wasn't on the radar. My parents are first-generation Americans. Their parents all born outside the United States. I didn't know what music school was. I didn't know it existed and wouldn't have known where to apply if I had. So I was an economics major. So, and then 6 years as a computer programmer in a variety of gray felt-lined cubicles, pretending to work and sort of stealing my paycheck, sorry to all my coworkers at the time. And then I had kind of an epiphany, in, this is in 1998. Well, the epiphany was December 4th, 1997, if you're keeping score. And on that day, I suddenly realized I was taking a computer programming class I didn't want to take, and a job I didn't want in the first place to make money I knew I was stealing, and so on. And the inauthenticities piled on inauthenticities led me to, I'm grateful to say, sort of a realization that I was miserable despite the fact that I had a good job and a lovely girlfriend and no debt and a cute car and a cute apartment and a career in the making, and miserable nonetheless because I suddenly realized I was lying for a living, lying to everybody, and most especially lying to myself. This was not where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in that job, and I didn't want to get married. I was engaged to be married. I didn't know until that moment, all of a sudden, and I died that day, you know. But I did say it out loud. I said it out loud to my fiance, and I said it out loud to myself, and I said it out loud to my boss. I need to be single. I need to make music. So I moved across the country from Chicago to LA to make music, which started very glamorously on on the couch of my brother's apartment and at a flower shop on Melrose and La Brea, where they had a happy hour every Friday for 2 hours where cut flowers were half price and there's a guy singing. That was me. And they gave me 4 $20 bills, which was the first money I ever made as a musician. And that was very exciting. It didn't help much, but it was still very exciting. And I sang Beatles and Crowded House songs and was very happy. And 20 years later, approximately, my 21st album is coming out in a month. And I've made well, you haven't heard it yet. You haven't heard it yet. It could be a complete disaster. I don't think it is. But 21 years later now, hundreds of songs, thousands of performances, all sorts of things, all born from that realization that day in 1997 that I was lying for a living, all born from that death and birth again. But even though I stopped lying for a living that day, it doesn't mean I stopped wondering what it is I'm doing. As I told the first service, I moved to West Hollywood to be in the belly of the music industry beast. That's where they are. Everybody you hear on the radio was living within 2 miles of me, and yet I somehow managed to meet none of them. And I managed to build none of what you would call a conventional music industry career, because while Danny moved across the country and took this huge leap of whatever you'd call it, faith and it didn't feel like risk. It felt like survival, to be honest, to do the authentic thing instead of the faith. It felt important. It felt I needed to do it. So it wasn't courage exactly, but it sure looked like it from the outside. And instead of arriving in LA and knocking on doors, I started accepting invitations from unity churches and religious science churches and interfaith organizations and humanitarian organizations and Habitat for Humanity to sing nice songs for nice people. And there I found what they call in the music business a niche. But the niche wasn't in the music business. The niche was songs for humanity, which made it impossible to start a conversation with anyone in the actual music business. Unfortunately for my music career, I have been to therapy. There's one power, invisible, and just see it everywhere and every day. One power indescribable, and just speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth. As simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord. Call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angel's wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. We speak so many languages, different clothing, different colors, different names. But different is only dangerous when we forget that in the heart we're all the same. And we'll remember once we close our eyes to see that such distances were never meant to be. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus or Lord. Call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem, or heaven's door. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign. It's the universe, it's music, Mother Earth, or Father Time. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, yeah. One power is what we are. It's the moment of creation. It's an everlasting peace. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the birthright of all nations. It's the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon, for it's love that's most deep. It's one power. Oh, 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 oh. What we are is one. that lives forever in you and me. It's the power of the love in you and me. So while I have done this strange thing for a living, I have never stopped wondering what it is exactly I'm doing, and more importantly, why I'm doing it. Which leads me to a little story of my family. I am my mom's parents, born and raised and grew up in a tiny town in Poland, near the border with Russia. And in 1939, they, my Bubby and Zadie, and a brother on each side, so 4 of them, decided that they were going to leave before the Nazi army arrived. Not because they knew what was going to happen, but they'd heard stories and they didn't have a good feeling about it, so they crossed over the border into Russia, where the Russian army said, either join the Russian army or we arrest you. And they were arrested and sent to Siberia. They lived in Siberia, barely, as far as I can tell, and for several years. At some point, they were told through, as far as I understand it, a letter and word of mouth. They were told that that the day after they left their village, the Nazi army arrived and killed everyone else in their family. Brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and cousins and parents and grandparents all were gone the next day. They didn't know that for several years. Meanwhile, they were trying to survive in Siberia in a work camp. And when the war ended, they ended up in West Berlin, the safest place in Europe, right? American-occupied West Berlin, where they lived for a year, maybe a year and a half, and scraped by. These are things they didn't ever talk much about. And this is, there's nothing actually specifically unique about this story. We all have a story, one kind or another, an immigrant story, whether it's 10 years ago or 100 years ago or 200 years ago. We all have a story like this, but this just happens to be mine. So they arrived in America because a family in Chicago sponsored their emigration to the United States, saw their names in the book of Holocaust survivors that was published for American Jews to look through. And they found the Ludin family, and they sponsored the 4 of them, although it wasn't 4 anymore, because my mother had been born in Uzbekistan on the way out of Siberia, and my uncle had been born in West Berlin. So the 6 of them got on a boat and crossed the ocean on a boat, which is a journey my mom still remembers. She remembers everybody being sick and terrible storms on the boat. She remembers arriving in view of the Statue of Liberty and everyone on the boat weeping at the sight. She remembers docking and being escorted to Union Station in New York City, where they got on a train to Chicago and settled on the north side of Chicago, where then they grew up, and where my mom met my dad, who also had grown up in Chicago. My dad's the child of, the reason I have an Arabic last name is my grandfather was born in Syria and left Syria very young. But my grandmother, I know more about. She was the youngest of 13, all of whom emigrated to the United States at the turn of the 20th century. So poor, my Bubby used to say, half jokingly, I don't think she was kidding, because she was always funny. She was always chuckling. You couldn't really tell. But she used to say we were so poor that our father was a shoemaker, but we couldn't afford shoes. So they arrived in the United States, 13 kids not speaking English, and their parents. And my Bubby, about 4'2" at her tallest, scrappy and funny and smart as a whip and feisty, and worked for almost 30 years at Sears Roebuck, took the bus winter or summer, rain or shine, snow, sleet or hail, whatever that phrase goes, took a train to downtown Chicago, where she worked in the Sears Tower, which was the tallest building in the world, although she was afraid of heights, so she worked on the 3rd floor for almost 30 years. And I'm pretty sure never took the elevator up. Anyway, so that Bubby and Sadie had 2 boys, one of whom joined the Navy. He was a troubled kid. He joined the Navy and died electrocuted in the Navy in his early 20s. Uncle Jack, who I never met. The other son, Sheldon, was also smart as a whip, very disciplined, and without a penny to his name, basically. They lived in this roach-infested little apartment in Chicago, but he got a full scholarship to University of Chicago, and then a full academic scholarship to Harvard Law School, then became a law professor, and for 45 years professed and wrote and taught and defended our civil rights. His specialty was First Amendment protections for us, freedom of speech, religion, assembly, and press. And he's a national expert on it. The Supreme Court consulted with him. The federal judges consulted with him. He taught federal judges about civil rights. That was his commitment. And he went on to meet Sonia, and they had 3 boys, one of whom is this non-lawyer, married a nice Italian girl who makes beautiful jewelry, and we had a boy named Jude. So all these years, I have been doing this, what I do, which is this amorphous, strange thing. And to be honest, and maybe some of you will relate, depending on where you come from, I always have made music I've always made nice music. That I always did. I sang, after graduation in high school, I took my trombone, still in cap and gown. I took my trombone to my Bubby's hospital. My mom's mom was dying of breast cancer, and I took my trombone to her hospital room and played for her in the hospital room in my cap and gown. And every time I visited my other Bubby in the nursing home, my dad's mom lived to 98. That scrappy 4-foot-tall woman, about as wide as she was tall. And whenever I'd visit her in Chicago, I would play a little concert for all the old Jewish people in the nursing home that she lived out her last 10 years of life. So I always did that. But there was a component of what I have done which has been very mysterious. I did move to LA to write a hit song. I would very, very much like a college fund for my kid. Very much. I remember vaguely what a 401k feels like. The words matching funds are in like gold, shiny in my imagination. I remember. But meanwhile, and this is not to sound noble, it's the opposite of noble, I have been like water all these years, whether I've meant to or not, and I believe that we all are. We all are, in fact, following a destiny that we were born to follow. We are actually all doing the work we were meant to do. The question is not whether we're going to do what we came to do. The question is whether we're going to fight it all along the way. Because fighting it all along the way gives us some illusion of control and gives us some sense that, no, I wasn't meant to run this little store. I was meant to build an empire. I wasn't meant to have this car. I was meant to have that car. I'm not going here. I'm going there, wherever it is. And I do that to myself. And the added component for me, the added component for me is that I come from a Jewish family, and I'm not supposed to be singing for the whole world. I'm supposed to be representing Jews. I'm supposed to be singing in synagogues. I'm supposed to be close to the faith and close to the ancestry that suffered so much, gave their lives for us to be here. Crossed that ocean on that boat, having lost everything. And all these years, I have felt a push and a pull. What is it I'm doing and why don't I sing in synagogues more? Why do I call my record label Humanity Music? Why do I sing One Power with the intensity with which I sing it? And that is real. Every line, every time, 5,000 times since I wrote it, right? No exaggeration. Why and where does it come from? And only gradually have I realized that rather than betray or forget where I come from, I am a unique outcome, unique like my brothers are and everyone else is. I am a unique, specific outcome and result and product and tribute to where I come from. My family paid tremendous dues for me to be here with this guitar that's too good for me, this beautiful Taylor guitar. My family suffered. I'm a songwriter because of somebody I never met, right? I am this little mishmash, this short, disturbingly hairy kid from Skokie, Illinois, because of who came before me. I haven't forgotten them. I'm honoring them. I'm remembering them with my music. So I could, and in a different life, might have written the hit song. Maybe I still will. But the call, the drive to write the kind of music I write comes from a deeper place than any I installed or planned. It's not, I didn't know it was in my Toyota Tercel when I drove to LA, but it was right there in the seat with me, right? So I arrived with a destiny to fulfill, whether I wanted to, liked it, identified it or not. And I don't always like it. I do want the retirement fund. I do. I don't always like it. I do resist it. I do watch the Grammys and grieve. I do. Any profession you're in, you watch right? I do. I watch it year after year and I think, another year. Another year. My songs, I've written a song better than that one. That guy probably lived down the street from me. I never met him. The hell was I doing? Singing at an interfaith event in Schenectady. Anyway, so if there's maybe, I don't know, I talk and I sing and I let it be what it is for anyone who's listening, okay? But in this particular case, if there's any takeaway for anyone in this room, a stranger you never met gives you permission to allow who you have become to be enough. That's my takeaway, right? And enough is an elusive word and an elusive feeling. What you have done could be enough. What you've achieved, what you've earned, who you've loved, what you've built. Could it be enough? Could you actually be a tribute and a testament to who came before you, rather than an almost was, or should have been, or could have been, or why didn't? Enough. And I'm still working on it. I'm no master of this, but this is I think what I came to say. If this is my last song, if this is my final day, if tomorrow I'll be gone, what do I want to say? If this is my last song, if it's my time to go, when my body's moved on, what will I have to show? Oh, but fortune and fame, they scatter to the wind. The things that make a name just don't matter in the end. But is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and skies a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. If these are my last words for all of the earth to hear, if all that I have ever been is about to disappear, if these are my last last words. There's nothing that I need to say. I have only tried to serve. It's never been about talking anyway. So much hurt there is to heal. It's hard to understand. All I can hope to feel is that I am doing what I can. Is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and skies a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. Have I given hope to the hopeless? Has a hungry soul been fed? Has a child stood a little bit taller 'cause of something that I said? Have I left a little kindness? Have I eased a little pain? If so, then I'm glad I came. For that, I'm so glad I came. If this is my last song, what do I leave behind? What do I pass on? If I am out of time.
Thanks for joining us today. And if you like the message, we invite you to like it, share it, and please subscribe.
We are a New Thought church where lives are transformed. So come on, check us out at unityhills.org.
Namaste.